we're gonna go into a video that talks about packing and gear. But and basically I'm only like, you know, a third of the way through this little like story of my kind of lineage. But what we do is we kind of jump back and forth to it because it's nice because as we kind of go through the rest of this workshop, we kind of cut back to like, okay, well, right now where we left off, I did this book, right? Awesome. I'm working for surf magazines. My work is comprising of what? Mainly editorial, right? Editorial. Does everybody know what that means? Like just shooting for magazines, purely like magazine assignments or on spec assignments for magazines where you're either getting hired to go and shoot this location for a feature or for whatever, or you're in touch with the editor and you're kind of just taking pictures hoping that they'll use something and there's a little more communication than just like randomly blindly submitting, right? On spec, meaning speculation. Okay, so this is where my career is right now, okay? And we'll just pause right there really quick because that was what made up all of my income. And sadly, I mean, you guys, the point of this thing is to kind of, I really want to talk straightforward with you guys and be really realistic about, okay, well, I mean, what I might be shooting for my own like personal enjoyment all the time and stuff and what I might be shooting for, you know, a career is sometimes a lot different. So when I say like, you know, this is what I'm shooting for my income, you know, obviously like there are a lot of other things I'm shooting, but this is what is compromising of the bulk of my income, what's making me live and breathe as a photographer in the field, right? Is mainly at this point editorial. Okay. I started to work after that. Book came out, I started work for Surfline. I got a staff position at Surfline. Surfline was one of the biggest website advertisers of surfing in the world. They have all the webcams, massive. So I gained a really clear understanding of how valuable the web is. All of a sudden, my income started to come not only from editorial, but also print sales because I was able to promote a lot of my work out there and get it seeded out. And so I was getting a lot of inquiries for prints, selling a lot of prints, right? So that was kind of this twofold thing. Okay, so there we'll pause. So going back to this book, this project, one of the things that I was able to talk to some of the students about, and this is, if there is one concept that I could leave you with that I think is going to be valuable, it's really this, is that, you know, this idea of creating timeless images. There are other things that we can do to create timeless images. What are some of those? Do you guys know? Have any thoughts or ideas? We talked about this a lot. Yes.
No people, no cars, just
True,
nature.
yeah, anything that dates your images. Now, I would say if you don't have people, it's fine. You can, I personally, I loved having people in my images, but having people, it's specific. If this person was wearing a very brightly colored jacket with a big swoosh on it, it might not feel as timeless, right? So how do you do that? Shooting a lot of silhouettes, shooting in strong lighting scenarios where, you know, you see a photograph of a surfer in a green barrel and they're totally a silhouette. What does that do for the viewer?
Project your...
Yeah, you're like, I know that feeling. I know that feeling. I know what it's like to be in that scenario, that warm California evening sun, offshore's blowing. You can relate to it, right? A lot of people can relate to this because they don't see a boy or a girl with like blonde hair or this or that or logos. They just see a subject there. It's easier for the viewer to put themselves into that person's shoes and emotionally relate to your images if the subject is not easily identifiable. Okay? Yes.
Do you ask people to wear something neutral?
I mean, if you're shooting if you're shooting a commercial shoot, it doesn't really matter. He could be wearing yellow and you're not going to see him because it's totally backlit. But if you're shooting a commercial shoot, I mean, you're almost always styling your model. If I'm shooting on editorial, I'm just trying to work with what I have, you know, obviously, and I might be like, oh, tuck that in or blah, blah, blah. You know, you want to make them look the best you can, but you have to understand there's a big difference between a moment like this where this just happened and I'm just like, cool, or a moment where it's all set up and stylized and this and that. So we'll talk about that too, where there's these moments where you're kind of posing things and making them happen. You're basically making your ideas and concepts come to life or just shooting off the cuff as it happens. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you always, ask him to pose or just
like I said, it depends. This scenario just is happening. This person was here where, I mean, I can break down a lot of these images for you to give you a visual, but basically you hike behind this waterfall, we're all sitting here waiting, you know, I think he went out there and snapped a picture from this vantage point and then you know, might have like put his hands in his pocket and looked up. I snapped a photo and I said, and then he might have walked away for a second. I said, hey, can you go back? I want to snap one more picture of you. And he's like, great. So he goes back out and does, like simply like that. But it all kind of depends, like I said, you go to these places, sometimes you have these great concepts in mind, ideas that you want to execute. Other times, great stuff just happens along the way. Okay, we're gonna talk a lot about that because that's a really good question. Yeah.
Do you use yourself as a subject?
No, because I'm not really good with a self-timer and a tripod. I usually am always traveling with an assistant or with, on a commercial project or with like, maybe some athletes. Like if, this might be a photograph that might go into an article for a surf magazine, right? As like a filler image, and this might be one of the athletes from the trip, which is exactly what this was. This is just a surfer. Yeah, but it's never usually me.
Yeah.
I like being behind the camera. Yeah.
Do you feel like these timeless images and these timeless moments come from genuine elements, like genuine human emotions that in these beautiful places?
I would absolutely say so. I mean, I think that's what makes people respond to them. I think there's a lot of other things that go into it, go into creating that. But I would imagine, to me at least, that it's all based on your demographic, Like, so if it was, 12 and 13-year-old girls that were like looking at my photographs, this maybe wouldn't resonate to them, right? But people like you enjoy being outside. Maybe you've been in this scenario before. Maybe you've seen something like this before. So it relates to you. This is why understanding and knowing your demographic and who they are is important, right? Because if I know that most of the people that follow me are maybe, the 18 to 55-year-old males and females who spend, maybe 70% of their time, recreating outside, then this is going to be valuable to them and make sense to them, right? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you ever like Photoshop out something. No, never.
No, I'm not a fan of Photoshop. I'd never Photoshop someone's hand or a bird or anything like that. Tomorrow we'll dive into editing and I'll show you the process I use. I really just, the funny thing is too, is that most of my work it's besides what I put on Instagram or this and that, it's being used by a magazine or a client or someone, and they're doing all the work on it, right? So it wouldn't even make a difference because I couldn't like Photoshop a file and give it to them anyway. So other aspects that can make a photograph feel timeless, what are they? I know I talked to you guys about this, colors.
Do you want us to like talk about what we talked about?
Interject, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's probably in the videos, but I really want to get this out so that you hear it, and we're gonna play this video in a second. But do you guys remember? Yeah.
I was just gonna say like natural elements, like landforms are obviously like span way longer than human life, so people will be able to relate to that.
That's a great idea and concept too. That's a good one as well. A lot of times I'll look for items or objects that might not be around forever. Historical aspects of a place or a location, right? Something that kind of doesn't give it like date it, So. But really, it's this emphasis on color, right? You're an artist, right? When you want to create depth in an art piece and you're working with color, a lot of times what you're taught to do, and the only reason I know this is because the only class I really took in college was a three-dimensional art class, right? And drawing, and I loved art. And so what I have learned and applied to photography is that it's all about these color relationships, right? You want to create depth in your image because that's all we're trying to do. I like the word depth more than I like timelessness because this is a flat screen, right? But we're trying to make this image feel like it has depth, feel like it's stacked, feel like there's elements that come out, especially when you're looking on a phone. I mean, you got to think almost every single image you guys see nowadays is probably on your phone. You probably view 10 to 1 the amount of photographs or whatever on a device or on a computer than you do in person. So how do we make things jump off a screen, especially when it's in a square format that's like, 2 inch by 2 inch or something, right? So hard. Cool tones and warm tones, what do? They push and they pull. They recede and they move forward, right? Because of the fact that these cool tones are pushing back, these warm tones are pulling forward. What is one of the number one things you guys see every evening in California online or on social media? Sunsets, right? Why are we so drawn to sunsets? Is it like a human condition? Yeah, it kind of is, because we love that. We love that cool with that warm, right? That is like, it's just in our nature, right? And when you understand elements of art and how that works, this makes this image have more depth, probably also because of this, the fact that something's leading in here, but most importantly, it's that depth, okay? So I think in a lot of the images that I'm shooting, photographing, I'm really looking for elements that, it's too bad this screen's not as like vibrant as some of these other ones, a little washed out. But these elements of warm tones that really make an object like this feel like it's more forward, you know, something that feels like it's right up in your face, okay? What else do we have? Does that make sense, you guys? That those, if there's one thing I want you guys to apply, it's that element. Light is so important, okay? And it's so important just to get up early. I mean, if you get up early and stay out late. I mean, I can't emphasize. There's always this kind of rule of thumb in like the surf world, because when you're dealing with light on water, it's so amazing, right? But you could get they always say, like, you can get a cover on a 2-foot wave if it's the right light in the right conditions, right? Because it can be an amazing, amazing lighting scenario that just really, really speaks to you, rather than shooting the same photo maybe better and bigger midday. Go ahead.
Did you say cool tones push and warm tones pull?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
What they do is matters you have both of them, I think. I'm not even, I think it's that, yeah, the cool tones kind of recede and the warm tones push forward. It might even be the opposite. I'm not exactly sure. I just always know that if you have both those elements in there, your image is going to have more depth, right? So what are some other elements, you guys?
Tones.
Tones. I'm talking about, like, what are physical things you can implement in?
Like in that case, the tree is
Foreground, right?
So that adds
Foreground,
depth to
background.
that.
Foreground, right? Okay. Midground, background, rule of thirds, right? All of these things, right? We don't need to get into every single aspect, but foreground is so important. Rule of thirds. This photograph on that screen, you guys should like check this out, because it's a lot cooler. Here, you can see it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot better, right? So there's actual color in the sky there. But yeah, these amazing, you know, sunset clouds, right? And then you have this cool water, and you have this reflection, and all of these things really give your image a lot more life, a lot more depth. And these are the things that we need to look for in photographs. Like, it's not enough, especially nowadays, it's not enough just to pull up and snap a picture and leave, okay? You have to be implementing as many of these elements. Leading lines, okay? I don't care if it's sidewalks in your photograph or whatever it is, or trees or something, they should be leading out of the corners or pulling your eye to something that's important, right?
So are you a fan of like making your photos more vibrant than like maybe how you saw it, or just to kind of?
We're gonna get into that in post-processing.
Okay.
But I think you'll be pretty shocked at the amount of work that the little amount of work that I try to do in my images, you know? It's really, for me, it's about bringing it back to a flat gradient and then kind of working it from there, you know? I'd rather work with my curves and tones than I would saturation and vibrance and things like that. Just one last thought before we transfer over to this gear video, you guys, is if I was to wait 5 seconds, what would happen to this image? And I snap this photo 5 seconds later.
Boat
Yeah.
will go away.
But would go where?
No, go away. Not good in composition.
Yeah, where would he go?
Go in the shade.
Yeah, in the shadow.
Right. So this is like a really dumb question, but I want you guys to understand, like, you see this stuff on, like, happen in photographs. You're like, wait, what are you doing? No, like, you put him in this bright part of the image, right? You put him in the part where it feels like he's going somewhere. So it's so important too. If the person was just sitting there, not moving, it wouldn't be as interesting as if they were actually, I mean, this is literally a photograph of somebody paddling into our camp. We got to this spot, we posted up, we waited for the sun to set. There's an amazing story behind this photograph, but I walked up the hill and I'm like, oh my gosh, the light's beautiful. Hey, can you go out and do a circle for me? Awesome. And just this image of where he's moving into this place, it says volumes, you know? But obviously all of these elements, what's happening too on the mountains? We have this really beautiful natural convergence, right? Into the center of the frame. It's like, I mean, you can't not take a good picture there, you know, but more importantly, I just want to bring those elements.